Hello guys. The story I'm about to share isn't mine. It's from my best friend Andrew. Unfortunately, he's unable to post the story himself, but he gave it to me and asked me to share it when I visited him in prison. I hope you can learn from his and my mistakes. My name is Andrew, 29 male, and it's quite sad that I had to write this story from the last place I expected to be. If I was told that I would wound up in prison because of my ex-girlfriend, I would have probably laughed it off. But after I ended up here, I realized that I had made a terrible mistake and it's too late to correct that now. This is my story. When Tessie and I first met, it was during the preparation of my cousin's wedding. She was a friend of my cousin's wife, to-be, and they seemed close. I don't know if it was just me, but the moment I saw Tessie, my heart skipped for a moment, and I knew there was something special about her. Something I had to find out. During the course of the wedding, we talked to each other a couple of times, but it was nothing serious or personal. It was just us trying to help around and run some errands. And after the wedding was over, I asked her if we could hang out for a while before I left town, and she agreed. We got to know each other, and I fell in love with her instantly. As of that moment, I was currently single and open to starting a new relationship since my relationship with my ex-girlfriend did not end well for the both of us. Tessie, on the other hand, had just left a toxic relationship. She said it herself. Her ex-boyfriend was a chronic stalker. He lied to her, cheated on her, and abused her verbally and physically at times. But she was able to break out of the relationship, despite dating him since they were in high school. When she told me that, I was glad we were both single, and with time, I knew if I played my cards well, she'd be mine. And I wasn't wrong. Tessie and I started out as friends. I visited her whenever I was in town, and in less than 7 months, she agreed to be my girlfriend. Our relationship started out well. She visited me on weekends, and I did same. We hanged out when we had time, went on small vacations out of town, and were literally there to support each other whenever the need arose. I loved Tessie with all my heart. She was my world and everything and every day. I looked forward to spending the rest of my life with her. If I made any plans, it was for me and Tessie. Even when she was working, I gave her money on a monthly basis, and this was because I did not want her to lack anything. And not just that, I came from a family where men loved to take care of their women and brag about them like trophies. So I did the same for Tessie. Though I did not brag to her, I bragged about her to my best friend Anderson, who is the one sharing this story. I didn't brag because I wanted to show off or something, but because it boosted my ego as a man, and it made me feel good. I worked as a control engineer for the U, and this was even more reason I was barely around in my hometown. Before we started dating, I explained to Tessie that the nature of my job could take me to a different location at any time, and she admitted that she was fine by that. She even said she wasn't the clingy type of girlfriend, and she was okay with coming over to see me whenever she had the time or whenever I was back in town. Before the tragic incident happened, Tessie and I had dated for 2 years plus, and I was planning to propose to her. I knew it was about time we tied the knot, as I could not think of any other woman aside from her. Even with the distance in our relationship, we spoke on phone and chatted every day. She gave me steady updates of what was going on in her life, how she was dealing at work, and other random things. Also, we made a promise that we would take pictures of ourselves every day and send it to each other. At least it would help us on bonding more while we were apart. This worked pretty much, and it helped us in feeling connected to each. I didn't trust so many people, but I knew I could count on my best friend, Anderson, to check on Tessie from time to time. Anderson was great. Whenever he was free, he'd drive to her side of the state and check up on her for me. Aside from making a promise to send each other pictures whenever we took a new one, we also promised to remain faithful to each other. Personally, I kept to my own side of the promise. I kept my emotions in check, and I did not cross my boundary with female colleagues at work, because I did not want it to lead to flirting or me cheating on my woman. Tessie and I were so close that she'd even tell me about guys that were making advances at her, their unusual kindness, etc., and we would just laugh about this. At work, I was given the permission to visit my family and spend the weekend with them at the interval of every 2 months, and my next visit wasn't due until 3 weeks. Tessie and I spoke on phone every day, and we talked about all the crazy things we would do when I came back home. Already within our 1 year of dating, I asked her to move into my apartment, since it was bigger, more cozy and closer to her place of work. Since it was still my place of work, since it was still my place and I was the one who invited her to move on, I still paid the monthly rent. It wasn't a big deal for me since we were given accommodation at my place of work and I earned a lot of money. Like I said earlier, I loved Tessie so much, and my intention was to propose to her the next time I went home. I wanted to throw a small engagement party, invite our families and friends, and have a great time with her. I had already gotten the ring, the kind she always wanted, and I wanted to spend a couple of days with her first, before I proposed to her. Unfortunately, there was a slight change of plans. I was implementing logic for the new plant, in the petrochemical refinery. There were some major mechanical complications, and because of this, I was allowed to go home 2 weeks earlier, instead of after 3 weeks. This came as great news for me, because my birthday was just around the corner, and I looked forward to celebrating it with Tessie and a couple of friends and family. I didn't tell Tessie about my change of plans because I wanted to surprise her. I wanted to see the expression on her face when I'd knock on the front door and she'd open it, look confused, and the jump on me in excitement. Yes, I planned all of that in my head. Anderson, my best friend, was aware of my surprise plan. I told him about it and he said it was a good idea, even that morning when I travelled back to my hometown in the US. I spoke with Tessie and she told me it was her day off, but she'd spend it at home resting during the day and she would go visit her parents in the evening. And when she asked what I was going to be doing, I cooked up a work life for her and she bought it. I had visualized how the rest of our day would be and how we'd spend the evening together, but little did I know that going back to my apartment was going to send me to prison. When I arrived at my hometown, I didn't go straight to see Tessie because I promised Anderson I was coming to see him first. Anderson and I had been best friends since we were childhood and we had a bro code we never broke. Anderson lived with his parents, and it has been a long time since I had stayed with him, my second family. I arrived at his place by 1 p.m. We talked, made jokes, and recapped a lot of things, and finally, I had lunch with his family. By the time all of this had ended, it was almost 4 p.m. and it was time for me to go home. Surprisingly, Anderson gifted me a custom-made knife as an early birthday gift. It had my initials on the handle. One of Anderson's hobby was being a blacksmith, and he had been crazy about it since we were young. He wasn't only able to make knives, he made a couple of things too, but the knife was such a perfect gift because of how he made it. Also, the shape of its wooden sheath gave it a deceptive appearance, and it was difficult for a stranger to tell what was in it. After I left Anderson's place, I went straight home. But before that, I texted Tessie to know if she was napping, like she told me she would, and she responded that she was reading a novel she had been putting off for a while. I only did that to confirm if she was home, so my surprise would not be ruined. Before I got home, I dropped by to get her flowers. I had been taught to never return home from a long journey without getting flowers for my woman, because it had a way of sparking up the relationship. Finally, I arrived at my apartment, and I made sure I was with my key in case I knocked the first time, and she did not respond. I also thought it wouldn't be bad if I waited in the apartment to surprise her in case she stepped out to buy something. Like I expected, I knocked on the door, but she did not respond. Already, from outside the apartment, I could hear soft music, and I wasn't surprised because I had known Tessie for playing loud R&B music whenever she was at home. I didn't want to knock anymore because I knew she wouldn't hear me, so I just unlocked the door. Up till today, I have been unable to get rid of the images I saw from my head. I opened the door, and I saw Tessie and her ex-boyfriend, the same toxic guy she told me about, right behind her. The loud music was still playing in the background, and there were empty bottles of beer on the floor, as well as the table. His clothes were littered on the couch, and from the look of things, it did not look like he just came to visit. It looked like he has been there for more than a day. I stood there by the door, unable to say a thing. I was literally frozen, and I felt my blood ice up in my veins. I could not believe that I came back to my apartment just to see my GF and her ex-boyfriend on my couch. I was still trying to wrap my head around the sight of it. Just immediately she saw me, and they got up, but he was trying to look tough. I called Tessie, and although she looked surprised to see me, she did not look remorseful. She just asked, "What are you doing here, Andy?" I remember vividly. I told her, "This is my house, and I am free to come in whenever I like, with or without your permission." After I reminded her it was my house and I could come in whenever I wanted to, her ex-boyfriend laughed. It must have sounded funny to him, and after laughing, he told me to scram. I could not just believe my ears, and at that time I was so angry that my chest was beginning to swell up and go down. Tears were already rolling my cheeks. I even found it difficult to talk, and when I asked Tessie why she had done that to me, she said, "It's never too late to rekindle old love." I yelled, and before I could say what I had in mind, her ex-boyfriend yelled at me, and that was when I pulled out my knife, and also the last thing I remembered. The rest of the story had told to me by the police. According to Tessie and her ex-boyfriend, they told the police I pulled out a knife and attacked them. They said they tried to stop me, but I was too angry to be stopped, but I don't remember any of that happening. Luckily for me, none of them died in the attack, else I would have been charged with murder. Unfortunately for them, because of my anger, they sustained multiple cuts on their arms and faces, and as a result of that, Tessie's face has been scarred for life. She did multiple surgeries to try and fix the physical damage I had done, but no form of surgery could or can correct or hide the hideous woman I turned her into. The last time she visited me in prison, she promised that she would make my life miserable for what I had done to her. She was fully scarfed, and I think it was because she could not be seen in the open. She had forgotten that the reason all of that happened was because she cheated on me with the same man we said so many negative things about. She broke her promise and hurt me so bad. I am currently serving prison for what I did, and there's nothing more miserable than this. I wished it didn't have to be like this. Maybe if my best friend had not given me a knife as an early birthday gift, this would not have happened. Though I feel bad for what I did to Tessie and her ex-boyfriend, but deep inside, I think she deserved it for breaking my trust and taking me for a fool. In the end, her ex-boyfriend finally dumped her, and whenever she wants to go out, she has to apply a lot of makeup else. She'll having heads turning wherever she goes. Anderson has been visiting me, and he's the reason you're all reading this story. He regret gifting me the knife, but I take responsibility for everything that happened, and neither of us expected things to turn out that way. The most important conclusion I derive from this story is to subscribe to this channel for more interesting stories in the future. Let me know what you thought about the author in the comments. Was his revenge too weak or too brutal?